In the midst of World War II, an unlikely partnership formed between three of the most powerful nations in the world: the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom. This alliance, known as the Grand Alliance, was crucial in defeating the Axis powers, but divisions would start to appear even before the war's end. In this video, we will discuss the outcomes of the Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam conferences, and their importance in establishing the early tension of the Cold War. The Tehran Conference in 1943 was the first major meeting between Joseph Stalin, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill. The key outcomes included an agreement by the United States and the United Kingdom to invade Nazi-controlled Europe. Stalin was keen for this to happen as soon as possible, as the Red Army was, at the time, the only member of the Grand Alliance fighting against the Nazis in Europe. The USSR also agreed to join the war against Japan as soon as Nazi Germany was defeated. In February 1945, the leaders met again at the Yalta Conference. Here they agreed on the division of Germany into occupation zones. The country would be divided into 4 zones of control, split between the USA, the UK, the USSR, and the newly liberated French. Berlin was located into the Soviet zone of control, and due to its importance as the capital city of Germany, was also divided into 4 zones in the same way. Additional agreements related to the establishment of the United Nations and the guarantee of free elections for any countries liberated from Nazi control in Europe. Most of these countries were in Eastern Europe and were being liberated by the Red Army. The final meeting took place at the Potsdam Conference in July 1945. This meeting was a major turning point in the relations between the USA and the USSR. Franklin D. Roosevelt had died and been replaced by his vice president, Harry S. Truman. Unlike Roosevelt, Truman made no secret of his dislike for communism and Stalin personally. Just before the conference began, the USA had successfully tested an atomic weapon in New Mexico. At Potsdam, Truman chose to inform Stalin that the US possessed a new weapon of unusual destructive force. Stalin already knew about the Manhattan Project as a result of his spy network. However, he publicly complained that by not being informed about the test beforehand, he was not being treated as an ally. Divisions would emerge in other ways. It was clear that Stalin had no intention of honoring the agreements made at Yalta. There was no sign of free elections being allowed in liberated countries in Eastern Europe, and a communist regime was being installed in Poland. The issue of reparations also came to a head. Stalin demanded more money to reflect the sacrifices made by the Red Army throughout the war. It was agreed that Stalin could take as much as he wanted from the territory he controlled, and a 10% share of resources from territory controlled by the Western powers. This course of action left many in the USA concerned about a repeat of the mistakes made in the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, where a defeated Germany had been left crippled by enormous debts. The USA would go on to use their new atomic weapons twice in 1945, with the bombing of Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. This prompted Stalin to escalate his own nuclear research, and in 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested an atomic weapon of their own. This test, known as RDS-1, or First Lightning, took place at the Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakhstan. This began the nuclear arms race that would come to define the entire Cold War period. In 1946, 2 telegrams set the stage for a further collapse of the wartime cooperation between the USA and the USSR. The long telegram was sent by George Kennan, an American diplomat stationed in Moscow. In this detailed message to the US State Department, Kennan outlined his views on Soviet behavior and intentions. He described the Soviet Union as inherently expansionist and driven by a deep-seated fear of the West. Kennan argued that the Soviet regime was determined to spread its influence globally, necessitating a policy of containment by the United States to prevent the spread of communism. The Novikov telegram was a response to the long telegram sent by Nikolai Novikov, the Soviet ambassador to the United States. In his report to the Soviet government, Novikov depicted the United States as aggressively pursuing world domination through economic and military means. argued that US foreign policy was driven by monopolistic capitalism and that American leaders were preparing for global conflict. This document highlighted Soviet fears of American expansionism and contributed to the growing mistrust between the two superpowers. The wartime conferences at Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam laid the foundations for the post-war world, as the leaders of the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom made crucial decisions about the future. However, the use of atomic weapons by the United States introduced a new era of nuclear tension, setting the stage for an arms race that would define global politics for decades to come. The Long Telegram and the Novikov Telegram revealed the deep-seated suspicions and ideological rifts between the superpowers, foreshadowing the Cold War's long and complex struggle. As we move forward, we'll delve deeper into the confrontations, alliances, and crises that emerged from this period of intense rivalry and mutual distrust. Join us in the next episode as we explore the early stages of the Cold War, the formation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, and the pivotal events that shaped the second half of the 20th century. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth history documentaries.